Have you ever wondered why she chased him, the man who didn't call back, didn't explain himself, didn't try to prove anything? While you sat there thinking if maybe one more good morning text would change her mind, he vanished and she followed. You think it's about effort? You think it's about showing her you care, about being consistent, about proving you're not like the others. You've been told that if you just love her enough, if you're honest enough, if you're safe enough, then she will finally see your value. But that's not how it works. She didn't leave because you were too cold. She left because you were too available, too predictable, too emotionally transparent. You didn't fail because you lacked love. You failed because you lacked tension. There's a reason women chase certain men, and it has nothing to do with your kindness, your loyalty, or your stability. Those are things they want later, not now. Not when the emotional game is still alive. Not when they're still measuring their worth through your reactions. Women chase the men they can't fully read. They chase the ones who mirror their own emotional chaos, the ones who don't give away their full attention, who speak in silences, who make them feel uncertain. Because uncertainty is addictive. Your affection was never the problem. The problem was that it was always there. You became a solved puzzle. And the moment she solved you, she stopped caring about the reward. Most men don't understand this. You've been trained by media, by weak role models, by your own fear of abandonment to believe that the way into a woman's heart is through emotional labor, through trying, through effort. But attraction doesn't respect effort. Attraction respects gravity, and gravity is something you don't create through performance. You create it by withholding, by remaining unmoved, by choosing yourself first. And always, you saw her start to pull away, so you leaned in. You tried to reassure her. You explained your feelings. You thought, if I can just show her how deeply I care, she'll stay. But she didn't want depth. She wanted friction. She wanted the feeling of earning you, of not being certain she could have you. That's what creates desire in her mind, not your availability, but her pursuit. This is how her instincts operate. Not her rational mind, not her words, her instincts. And they are ancient. Evolution wired her to chase what doesn't come easy, to desire what triggers her fear of loss, to crave the high of emotional elevation followed by emotional drop. You gave her the high, but you never gave her the drop. So she walked. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were always there. And if you're always there, you don't exist in her imagination anymore. You're no longer a fantasy. You're just a man with kind eyes and nothing to chase. You'll notice it in the details, the way her eyes lit up when she wasn't sure if you'd call, the way she responded faster when you took longer, the way she tried harder the moment she felt ignored. That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. Women don't consciously understand this, but they feel it, deeply, viscerally. She doesn't sit down and analyze why she suddenly finds herself thinking about him. She just does. The man who walks away without flinching owns more real estate in her mind than the man who stood beside her begging to be seen. You were taught to show up. He was busy showing nothing, and she chased him. Because to her, the absence of certainty is not rejection, it's obsession fuel. And this is where most men break themselves. You think if she's not chasing you, you must do more. But the moment you chase her, you kill her desire to chase you. That's the game, not because you or she are bad people, but because that's how human psychology works under the pressure of evolutionary desire. When she doesn't know what you're thinking, her mind stays active. When she doesn't know where she stands, her ego is triggered. When you don't need her, she starts needing to matter to you. Not because she's cruel, but because power is seductive. And men who don't hand over their power, they pull her in. You're not supposed to chase. You're supposed to choose. The man she chases is not the most loving. He's not the richest. He's not the handsomest. He's the one who knows exactly who he is with or without her. Because when you don't need her validation, she starts questioning her own, and that's when she moves, that's when she reaches, that's when the chase begins. You probably think if you stop trying, she'll disappear. That if you don't send the goodnight message, she'll assume you're done. That if you don't remind her of your feelings, she'll forget. But here's the truth: if she can forget you that easily, she was never invested, only entertained. You weren't building connection, you were giving her comfort, and comfort, without contrast, is background noise. A man who makes her feel everything too easily becomes emotional wallpaper, something always present, but never felt. You told yourself, but I'm being real. And maybe you were, but real doesn't mean effective. Real doesn't mean she owes you interest. You gave her what she should want, not what she actually responds to. And that gap between logic and emotion is where your pain lives. You need to understand something brutal: women don't fall for the man who makes the most sense. They fall for the man who makes them feel the most alive. It's not right, it's not fair, but it's true. And unless you stop living in a fantasy where honesty automatically earns love, you'll keep getting played, or worse, ignored. You want her to choose you because you're good. But she doesn't chase what's good, she chases what's scarce. Think about the last time you saw her obsessed. Was it with the man who texted back right away? Or was it with the one who kept her wondering? The truth is hard: she measures your value not just by what you give her, but by how easily she can access it. And when you become too accessible, she unconsciously devalues you, not because she wants to, but because her instincts compel her to. It's biology. It's the same reason luxury brands don't beg customers. They don't explain their value. They don't need to. The product speaks for itself. And because it doesn't chase, it attracts. You think women are different? They're not. They've just been allowed to pretend that they don't play by these rules while playing harder than anyone. When she senses that you're emotionally available before she feels she's earned it, her interest dies, quickly, silently, and she never tells you why. She just starts replying slower. She just starts making excuses. She just starts needing space. What she really means is, I figured you out, and I'm bored. Because deep down, she wasn't falling for you. She was falling for the story she could write around you, the unknown, the potential, the projection. And once you stripped away the mystery, she had nothing left to chase and no reason to stay. You never saw it coming because you were taught to equate love with effort. But love, for her, often begins in tension. She doesn't want your whole soul handed to her on a plate. She wants to crack you open. She wants to feel like she's the only one who can reach the part of you no one else gets to see. But you showed her too much. Too soon. You tried to prove your worth instead of letting her discover it. And by doing that, you robbed her of the emotional reward that makes the chase meaningful. She didn't ghost you because she's cruel. She ghosted you because she already got you. And the moment you're fully hers without resistance, the hunt ends, and so does the attraction. You might be thinking, but I don't want to play games. And I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to stop giving away your essence like it's disposable. Stop explaining your value. Stop revealing your entire emotional deck in the first conversation. She's not addicted to vulnerability. She's addicted to earning it. Let her wonder what you're thinking. Let her sit in silence after a message. Let her feel that she's not entitled to your time, your affection, or your presence just because she's there. Because once a woman knows she has you without effort, she stops asking if she even wants you. Do you understand now? She doesn't chase the man who loves the most. She chases the man who is hardest to reach because reaching him feels like winning. That's what triggers her obsession. Not your love, not your promises, not your poetry, but the feeling of earning access to something that no one else can touch. You don't become the prize by telling her you're the prize. You become the prize by knowing it and walking away the moment she acts like she forgot. Let me ask you something directly. When was the last time you withheld your attention from a woman on purpose? Not out of anger, not to punish her, but out of discipline, the discipline to protect your energy from being drained by someone who hasn't earned it. If your answer is never, then you've likely never been chased, only tolerated. Most men have no frame, no emotional gravity, no boundaries that hold their identity in place when a woman begins to pull away. Instead of letting her come to him, he reaches, he floods her with validation, he collapses into panic mode. Why? Because rejection feels like death to the average man, not just emotionally, but psychologically. It threatens his self-worth, his idea of being the good guy, the safe guy, the guy she should want. But she doesn't want should. She wants signal. Signal that you're not moved by absence. Signal that your world doesn't revolve around her approval. Signal that you have somewhere else to go emotionally, physically, sexually if she starts playing games. That's what makes her chase. Women are biologically wired to respond to dominance, not aggression, not abuse, but inner dominance. The ability to stay still while she tests your foundation. The ability to say no without fear. The ability to walk away without making a scene. Because here's the paradox: the moment she knows she can move you emotionally whenever she wants, she stops respecting you. Not because she's a narcissist, but because her mind is testing you constantly, even if she doesn't realize it. Does your mood shift based on her behavior? Do you need her to validate your identity? Do you hand her control just to keep her interest? If the answer is yes, she's already winning. And if she's winning too easily, she won't value the prize. Because the chase isn't about the destination, it's about who controls the emotional tempo. She wants to feel you're a mountain unmoved. She wants to feel tension, distance, a subtle emotional friction that makes her crave resolution. That resolution is you, but only if she feels you're not already hers. That's why the guy who gives less gets more. He's not more attractive, he's not more successful, he's not more kind, but he withholds. And that withholding creates emotional starvation. A woman will chase emotional starvation far harder than emotional satisfaction, because starvation triggers insecurity, and insecurity, for many women, triggers desire. She doesn't want to feel like she's doing you a favor by being in your life. She wants to earn her place. She wants to secure your attention. That's how she values it. When you offer it too freely, she subconsciously assumes, if he gives this to me so easily, who else gets it too? That thought alone makes her withdraw. Not because she wants exclusivity, but because she needs scarcity. Think about the man who keeps her obsessed. He doesn't try to win her, he doesn't explain himself, he doesn't double text. He lives in a frame where he expects to be chased, not because he's delusional, but because he knows his value. That's what you've never been taught. You were told that showing your love makes you brave, that being emotionally available earns her trust, that opening up fast proves maturity. No, it proves neediness, because if you were really whole, you wouldn't need to be seen so quickly. You wouldn't need her to understand your soul on the second date. You wouldn't rush to express what should take time to reveal. And that's what women feel. That rush, that desperate emotional hunger, it smells like weakness to her. Even if she can't explain it, she senses it. You call it honesty. She experiences it as insecurity. You call it devotion. She feels it as pressure. You call it connection. She feels it as weight. That's why she chased him, the man who was too busy to reply right away. The man who ended the date without asking for the next one. The man who looked her in the eye and didn't try to impress her, because he didn't need her. And that freedom, that emotional detachment, that quiet power, it made her want him more. She had to earn him. And when a woman has to earn a man, She respects that man far more than the one who hands himself over without resistance. That's the truth. You've been too available, too generous, too emotionally eager, and that eagerness was never read as love. It was read as fear. You thought the fear would disappear if you just proved yourself, if you just gave enough, if you just showed her that you're safe. But the more you gave, the more she pulled away. And now, you're sitting in silence, wondering how the man who gave her nothing got everything you wanted. Let's make something clear. She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because she never had to question if you'd stay. And when there's no doubt, there's no tension. Without tension, there's no thrill. And without thrill, there's no chase. You made it too easy. You became the yes man, the emotional sponge, the one who listens, validates, praises, supports. And while you hoped that this would make her feel seen, what it really did was make her feel in control. And control kills attraction. A woman may enjoy having power over you, but she won't respect you for it. She'll test you, push you, pull back, not to hurt you, but to see if you'll flinch. And if you do, she knows you belong to her, which means she no longer needs to earn you. You think love should be unconditional. You think it should be about effort and sincerity, but attraction isn't love. It's chemistry, and chemistry is cruel. It obeys no moral rules. A woman wants to feel pulled toward you, not dragged into closeness. She wants to feel like she's stepping into your world, not like she's babysitting your emotional needs. That's what most nice guys never understand. They're not too kind. They're too accessible. They reveal their feelings before she even earns their time. They put her on a pedestal before she even invests. They worship her before she even respects them. And then they're shocked when she ghosts. She doesn't ghost because she's heartless. She ghosts because the dynamic was never mutual. She was never chasing. She was never investing. She never felt anything real because she never had to reach for it. And if she didn't reach, she never valued it. That's why she keeps running after the man who gives her just enough to feel hopeful, but not enough to feel secure. It's not because she loves being hurt. It's because the tension activates her emotionally. You tried to love her into submission, but the men she chases, they understand the value of distance. They don't explain themselves. They don't justify their silence. They don't show up just because she demands it. They let her come to them. And when she does, she feels the effort. She invests. She thinks. She replays every word, every look, every pause. Because the absence of certainty keeps her emotionally alive. You never gave her that space. You filled it with affirmation, with reassurance, with declarations she didn't earn. And in doing so, you robbed her of the one thing she actually wanted, to wonder. You see, a man who commands desire isn't desperate for approval. He doesn't try to be liked. He doesn't fear rejection, because he doesn't attach his identity to her attention. You did. You made her the mirror of your worth. You wanted her to reflect that you're good enough, lovable, worthy. You hoped that if she stayed, it meant you mattered. But that's not her role. That's yours. When a man needs a woman to complete him, she feels that weight, and it drains her. Not because she wants a man with no feelings, but because she wants a man who owns his own. You handed her your heart and begged her not to drop it, but the men she chases, they never beg. They walk away first, and that's what burns in her memory. The guy who didn't flinch, who didn't text after the silence, who didn't plead for clarity, because he didn't need it. He knew what he brought to the table, and if she didn't see it, he wouldn't explain it. That's the energy she remembers. That's the man she wonders about at night, not because he was perfect, but because he was just out of reach. And you were always there, always explaining, always hoping, always available. And that availability didn't feel romantic to her. It felt weak. You gave her your soul before she even gave you her attention, and now you're empty, confused, bitter. But don't be. This is the moment everything changes. When you stop chasing, when you stop justifying, when you stop giving yourself to women who haven't earned a single inch of your effort. You don't need to become cruel. You need to become scarce. There's a moment in every man's life when he has to face himself, not the version of himself that seeks approval, but the version that doesn't ask. The version that doesn't beg to be noticed. The version that doesn't explain why he's a good man. The version that doesn't care if she stays or walks away. Because until you find that version of yourself, you will always be a slave to her attention. And here's the truth you've been running from. She only starts chasing when she senses that you could leave at any moment. Not because you're angry, not because you're manipulating her, but because your identity is not dependent on her. That's the shift. The moment you stop performing. You stop being the guy who texts to maintain closeness. You stop being the one who gives compliments hoping to be liked. You stop being the emotional punching bag for women who give you crumbs. You become the man who walks not just with your feet, but with your standards. Because when you understand your worth, you don't trade it for momentary affection. You don't bend to keep a woman interested. You let go the second she shows she doesn't value what you bring. And suddenly, she notices, not because you punished her, but because you stopped rewarding behavior that drained you. That's where the chase begins, not in cold games, but in quiet self-respect. You detach. You stop explaining yourself. You speak less. You observe more. You protect your energy like your life depends on it, because emotionally, it does. And when she senses that you could leave, she starts asking the questions you've been too afraid to ask yourself. What is he thinking? Why hasn't he called? Did I lose him? Those questions are not the enemy. They are the foundation of pursuit. And if she never asked them, she was never chasing you. Most men fear silence. They panic when she pulls back. They rush to close the distance. But real power comes when you stay still, when you don't react, when you allow the silence to speak for you. That's when she feels it. The shift, the gravity, the weight of a man who doesn't hand himself out for free. Because the moment you stop chasing, she's forced to choose step up or lose you, and either way, you win. Because men who operate from self-worth don't lose women, they filter them. They don't cry over attention. They watch behavior. They listen to patterns. And they remove themselves from dynamics where their presence isn't earned. Not because they're heartless, but because they remember who they are. You were never meant to beg. You were never meant to explain why you deserve love. You were meant to decide what kind of love you'll accept and walk away from anything that doesn't meet that standard. She will chase the man who values himself more than he values her reaction. She will crave the man who withholds not out of cruelty, but out of dignity. She will respect the man who disappears when he's not respected, not to manipulate, but to protect his peace. That's your job now. To become the man who doesn't need her to feel worthy. To become the man who doesn't fear rejection, because rejection only stings when you don't know what you deserve. To become the man who is emotionally free, because that freedom, that unbothered presence, that's what pulls her in. Not the flowers, not the poems, not the long messages explaining your heart. She wants to feel that you're not afraid to lose her, because when you're not afraid to lose her, she finally realizes what she might lose. And if she still walks, you let her. You don't fight, you don't follow, you don't fold. You let the silence take her place. You let the echo of your absence teach her what your presence used to mean. And when she remembers you, she won't remember a man who chased. She'll remember a man who chose himself. Because in the end, that's who she truly wanted all along. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.